They said the boy king choked on pigeon pie. That was the story, the lie etched in the pages of the court bard's song, in the whispers that danced through the red keep like rats in the walls. But the truth wasn't in the flavor of the feast. It was in the eyes of the girl who watched him die. Sansa Stark had worn a smile that day. Not the bright, blooming one she used to show in Winterfell, not the shy curve of lips from the girl who once dreamt of chivalry and songs. No, this smile was different. Small, still, too calm, like the snow before a storm. Joffrey Baratheon. No, Joffrey Lannister, the false son of incest and madness, died, gasping for air, clawing at his throat like a beast trapped in a hunter's net. His mother screamed. Tyrion stared, goblet in hand, and Sansa blinked. She did not flinch. She did not cry. She rose, quietly, while chaos erupted. The poison had taken longer than she expected. She'd crushed the black amethyst herself, hidden in the lining of her necklace, a gift from Ser Dontos. He never knew what it really was. He thought he was saving her. She let him think that. Sansa had learned something from Cersei. Let men believe they hold the strings. She watched Joffrey twitch one last time, and in that moment, her fear didn't vanish, it transformed. It wasn't gone, it was just silent, buried under the satisfaction of watching a monster die by her hand. But the truth about killing is that it never stops with just one. She fled that night with Dontos, but he was a fool. He thought gold was waiting for him. He didn't see Petyr Baelish's crossbow in the shadows. When Dontos fell, bleeding into the black waters, Sansa didn't scream. She simply asked Petyr, "Was that necessary?" Petyr only smiled. He knew too much. Sansa said nothing. She stared into the water, where Dontos's body floated briefly before the weight dragged it down. She should have felt something. Anything. But all she thought was, he talked too much anyway. On the ship heading to the Vale, Petyr praised her bravery. "Not many girls could do what you did. Not many queens could." "I'm not a queen," she said softly. "Oh, but you will be," he replied. They reached the Eyrie within weeks. Her aunt, Lysa Arryn, embraced her tightly, her hands shaking. With a desperate kind of love Sansa didn't understand. There was something rotten in Lysa, something soft and spoiled that clung too tightly. She called Sansa her daughter. She offered her lemon cakes and kisses. She watched her every move. But Sansa had already learned, love, especially in the capital, was just another kind of weapon. At night, she stared out from the moon door, wind ripping through her hair, and thought of Joffrey's face as he died. The purple veins, the burst vessels in his eyes, the spit bubbling at his lips. It should have haunted her. Instead, it empowered her. Every time she remembered it, the fear in her bones loosened just a bit more. Lysa died not long after, pushed through the moon door by Petyr himself, but it was Sansa who whispered the idea into his ear. "She's unstable," she said. "She's dangerous." "She is," Petyr agreed, "but her death would raise questions." "I can answer them," Sansa said calmly. And she did. With tears painted on her cheeks, she told the lords of the Vale that her poor aunt slipped, that she had begged her not to open the moon door, that Petyr had tried to save her. They believed her, because by now Sansa Stark had become very good at telling stories people wanted to believe. And in the mirror that night, she looked at her reflection. The northern girl was gone, her auburn hair pinned back, her voice smoother, more deliberate. She smiled softly, and for the first time whispered to herself, "I killed Joffrey," then paused and added, "I could do it again." The Vale was cold, but not like Winterfell. The chill here was sharper, more delicate, like a knife rather than a storm. Sansa found she preferred it that way. At least knives were honest. They cut straight through. She spent her days in high halls, learning the words of lords, studying their glances, measuring the pauses between their sentences. Men underestimated women like her. They always had. They saw red hair and softness and thought they knew who she was. A lady, a pawn, a girl grateful for protection. They didn't realize Sansa had learned the game from monsters. Petyr Baelish hovered, always watching her with those calculating eyes, like a man staring at his prize. "You're becoming quite the player," he said one evening over wine. "You've learned more than most in half the time." Sansa smiled. "I've had excellent teachers." He smirked, taking it as flattery. It wasn't. Word arrived. One morning by Raven, Joffrey's brother Tommen now wore the crown. Marguerite Tyrell was queen. Cersei still held power, clawing at it like a drowning woman. Tyrion had vanished after being accused of the murder, her murder, and King's Landing buzzed with suspicion. No one looked for Sansa Stark. The irony wasn't lost on her. The girl who killed the king had become a ghost. No wanted posters, no manhunt, no justice. Only Tyrion paid the price, and Sansa knew he didn't deserve it, but she didn't step forward. She didn't write a letter. She didn't even whisper his name in guilt, because guilt was a luxury she'd left behind, in the gardens of the Red Keep, alongside her innocence. One evening, Petyr came to her chambers, cloaked in false kindness. "You've grown strong, Sansa. I've seen it. I've nurtured it." She sat at the window, watching snow fall in slow, whispering flakes. "You sound like a gardener," he chuckled. "In a way, I am. I tend to beauty, to power. And when it no longer serves you," she asked, turning to him, "you uproot it." There was a beat of silence. Then he stepped closer. "You are different," he said, his voice lower. "Not just stronger, sharper, more dangerous. You remind me of your mother, but colder." Sansa stood, walking past him. "Maybe that's what's needed to survive in this world." Petyr reached out, touching her wrist lightly. "Not just survive, Sansa. Rule." She didn't flinch, but she looked at his hand, then his face. And in that moment, she realized something that hadn't been clear before. He thought he still controlled her, that he had molded her into this quiet weapon, and could aim her where he pleased. But Petyr Baelish had underestimated her, just like Joffrey had. A week later, during a gathering of Vale Lords, Petyr stood at her side, hand on the small of her back, whispering suggestions into her ear. "Say this," he murmured. "Remind them of your northern blood. Make them see your value." But Sansa didn't repeat his words. Instead, she turned to the gathered men and said, "Lord Baelish believes he speaks for me, but I am no longer anyone's mouthpiece." Petyr blinked, his hand stiffening. "I speak for House Stark." She continued, "The blood of the North runs in me. I watched my father beheaded. I watched my mother and brother slaughtered. I knelt beside a king as he died, choking on my gift." Murmurs rippled. Petyr whispered, "What are you doing?" She didn't answer him. She spoke to the room. "I have lived among lions and snakes. I've seen what power does to weak men, and I have no interest in pretending to be weak ever again." The Lord sat in stunned silence. Then one older man, Lord Grafton, spoke. "Are you confessing to the king's murder, Lady Sansa?" Her smile returned, that same still, silent one she wore at Joffrey's wedding. "No," she said, "I'm confessing to surviving it." Petyr pulled her aside afterward, anger finally cracking the mask on his face. "You don't know what you've done." But she did. She had done exactly what she meant to. "You think I'm your creation," she said, "but I'm not. I'm a Stark, and I will never be anyone's pawn again." He stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "Be careful, Sansa. I've destroyed women for less." She leaned in, her voice even colder. "And I've killed kings." Word spread quickly through the Vale. Some called her bold, others called her reckless, a few called her dangerous. But for the first time since the fall of Winterfell, Sansa Stark was not pitied. She was feared, And fear, she found, opened more doors than kindness ever had. The lords who once bowed to Petyr Baelish began listening to her words instead of his. She didn't try to win them with charm. She won them with truth, or at least enough of it to sound convincing. She spoke of the war, of the North's betrayal, by the South, of the blood on every southern crown. She never admitted what she had done, not in plain words, but she didn't deny it either, and that made her dangerous. Petyr began to unravel. He tried to isolate her, whisper lies about her to the lords, remind them of her Tully blood, her time in the lion's den, her connection to Tyrion. But none of it stuck, because Sansa had already planted something deeper in their minds. That she was the only true Stark left who had played the game and won. The turning point came during the council at the Eyrie. Winter had begun to tighten its grip on the mountains, and the lords gathered to discuss security, food, supplies. Petyr tried to dominate the room, as always, with his clever tongue and layered promises, but Sansa watched silently until the moment came. "Lord Baelish has served the Vale," she said, interrupting him mid-sentence. "But it's time the Vale served itself." Eyes turned. Petyr stiffened. She stood, calm, confident, wearing a deep grey gown lined with direwolf fur. Her voice rang like cold steel on stone. Petyr Baelish was never born to power. He climbed. It manipulated it. He lied, bribed, and killed his way to influence. Whispers spread across the room. He opened his mouth to protest, but Sansa raised a hand. "He murdered my aunt, pushed her through the moon door, then tried to silence the only witness." She turned to Maester Coleman, who looked suddenly pale. "Tell them you saw the ledgers, the false documents." Coleman hesitated. Sansa stepped closer. "You know the truth. I'm not afraid of it anymore, are you?" The old man gave a slow nod. The room turned. Petyr's voice cracked for the first time. "They won't believe this. They need me." "You need me? I needed you once," Sansa said, "when I was a scared girl. Now I'm a woman, and you're just another man who underestimated me." He laughed then, high and bitter. "You think you're safe without me? The North is ashes. Your family is dead. You've built your strength on secrets, and secrets crumble." She stepped close, lowered her voice to a whisper only he could hear. "And you built yours on lies. I only need one truth to destroy you." Petyr Baelish was sentenced that night. Sansa did not look away when his throat was cut. She did not weep. She did not flinch. She simply watched, the same way she watched Joffrey die. That night, alone in her chamber, she lit a single candle and stared into the flame. "You wanted to become a queen," she whispered to herself, "but the girl who wanted a prince was long dead." Now, Sansa Stark no longer wanted to marry the crown. She wanted to wear it. She had killed a monster, then another. But in the reflection of the candlelight, in the glint of her own cold eyes, she wondered, what if the real monster just was her? And would that be such a bad thing? Winter spread like a sickness across the Vale. Snow swallowed the mountain passes, and ice laced itself. Through the windows of the Eyrie, supplies ran thin. Whispers grew louder, but no one challenged her. Not after Petyr's execution, not after the girl who once trembled in the capital stood tall while his blood stained the snow. Sansa ruled the Eyrie now, not by crown, not by title, but by the weight of what she had done. The lords feared her, respected her, listened when she spoke, and she was careful with her words. She didn't demand loyalty. She made them choose it. Then came the Raven from the North. Jon Snow was alive and gathering forces to retake Winterfell from the Boltons. She read the letter twice, unmoving, before folding it carefully. There was no joy on her face, no relief, just a strange stillness. She'd spent so long assuming all her family was gone, that she was alone, that survival meant becoming something new, Something that didn't need home, or love, or blood. But John was different, a piece of the old world still breathing. She sat at her desk for hours that night, ink drying on empty parchment, unsure what to write. Part of her wanted to go to unveils, part of her feared what he'd see when he looked at her now. She wasn't the Sansa he knew, not anymore. The council debated whether to respond. Lord Royce urged caution. The Boltons are entrenched. If the Vale sends men, we lose resources we cannot spare. They flayed her brother, she said, coldly. Do you want to debate strategy or do you want to kill them? He blinked. Lady Sansa, she cut him off. I watched a king die. I let a lord die. And I'd kill 1,000 more before I let the Boltons keep what belongs to House Stark. That silenced them. She didn't plead. She didn't ask. She commanded. Soon after, she rode out. Snow thick on her furs, the sky grey with storm. Sansa Stark, once dressed in silk and silence, now wore black leather and wolfskin, leading a host of Vale knights down the mountain paths, not as a girl returning home, but as a force coming to reclaim it. She met John at the camp outside Moat Cailin. He stood at the edge of the firelight, older, hardened, a touch of sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Sansa, he said softly. She stepped down from her horse, staring at him. For a moment neither spoke, then she embraced him. But it wasn't the warm, desperate hug of long-lost siblings. It was quiet, composed, a touch of familiarity in a war of strangers. You're alive, she said. So are you. But when he pulled back, searching her face, he frowned slightly. You've changed. So have you, she said. Then added, You had to. He nodded. They didn't talk about what had been done, not yet. They didn't talk about Joffrey, or Petter, or the monster Sansa had chosen to become to survive. Instead, they talked about Winterfell, about war, about revenge, and for now that was enough. But at night, in her tent, Sansa could feel it pressing against her chest, that strange weight again. She had killed to get here. She had betrayed, manipulated, lied, and the girl John remembered, the one he used to call Little Bird, was buried beneath the snow. He didn't see the truth, not yet, but he would. They all would, because Sansa Stark wasn't fighting to bring back the past. She was fighting to build something new, whatever the cost. And if that meant becoming a monster herself, well, Joffrey had died screaming, Peter had died begging, the Boltons would die worse. The march toward Winterfell was slow and brutal. Snowstorms buried the road for days. Horses froze where they stood. Men muttered of omens and ghosts, as if the land itself remembered the blood spilled by the Boltons and was aching for vengeance. Sansa rode at the front, face wrapped in black wool, eyes locked ahead. Jon rode beside her, but there was a distance between them. Not physical, something deeper. She could feel his eyes on her sometimes, studying her, trying to understand what had changed. He asked no questions about how she escaped King's Landing, about what happened to Littlefinger, about why she could speak so clearly of death, but she saw it in his silence. He sensed something. He just didn't want to believe it. At campfires, men talked of battle. Jon spoke of plans, of allies, of northern houses still unaligned. Sansa listened, but when Jon said, "We need to win their hearts," she responded, "We need to show them we've already won." He frowned. "They won't follow us out of fear?" She met his eyes, calm and quiet. "They won't follow us if they think we can lose." Later that night, she summoned Lord Glover's bannermen. Alone, no council, no Jon. She told them of the Boltons' crimes. She spoke of flayed men, burning villages, dead children, all in vivid, brutal detail. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She made them picture it. "You have sons," she said coldly. "Do you want their skin hanging on your gates?" Glover swore his allegiance the next morning. Jon never asked how. By the time they reached the outer edge of Winterfell, the Vale Knights were hardened by frost and fire. Sansa wore a cloak of white direwolf fur now, hair braided like the old queens of the north. Ramsay Bolton watched from the battlements. He smirked as if he still held power, as if the banners of House Stark hadn't risen like ghosts in his yard. He sent a letter down on the back of a flayed man, his message carved into the corpse's flesh. Jon burned it. But Sansa read every word before it turned to ash. "Come and see," it ended. She whispered to herself, "Oh, I will." Before the battle, she met Jon in his tent. "You shouldn't be out there," he said. "Stay behind the line. If anything happens, I'll handle it," she said flatly. He sighed. "Sansa, I've seen too much blood." "So have I." He hesitated. "You've changed." "I had to." "You scare me sometimes." She looked at him then, really looked, and for a moment her eyes softened, just slightly. "Good," she said. "Fear keeps people alive." The Battle of the Bastards raged like a nightmare. Jon nearly died. The Vale Knights arrived just in time, and when the dust settled, Ramsay was dragged in chains to the dungeons beneath the castle he had stolen. Jon wanted to execute him himself, but Sansa had already spoken to the guards. "He dies by my hand," she said. That night she went to Ramsay's cell. He was tied, bloodied, lips cracked but still smiling. "You think this changes anything?" he rasped. "You'll always be the little bird, someone else's pet. You think because you kill me, you're free?" She knelt slowly. "I'm not killing you," she said, voice ice and steel. "You're starving." He frowned. And that's when he heard them, the dogs, his hounds. She had them locked in the dungeon for days. No food, no rest. Now they were hungry. "You said they'd never hurt you," she said, standing, "but you forgot one thing." "What's that?" he spat. "They're just like you. And you always turn on the ones who love you." The dogs howled, and Sansa walked away. Later, as she stood at the battlements of Winterfell, snow falling gently on her shoulders, Jon came to her side. "It's over," he said. She looked out across the yard, stark banners, dead bodies. A castle returned. "No," she said, "it's just begun." He turned. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer, because what she meant was this. She had killed a monster, but each death had carved something out of her, and now she wasn't sure what was left. A Stark, a savior, a queen, or something far colder? Winterfell stood, bloodied, burned, but still standing. The Stark banners fluttered in the wind, freshly stitched, stark white wolves against deep grey cloth. Sansa walked its halls now, as if they had never left her, as if the bones of her family weren't buried under these stones, as if she hadn't once fled this place like a frightened child. But she wasn't a child anymore. The North looked to her now, not just Jon, her, because when they looked at Jon, they saw the past. Honor, sacrifice, loyalty. But when they looked at Sansa, they saw survival. The northern lords gathered in the great hall. Jon sat at the head of the table. Sansa stood at his right. "We must unite," he said. "The long night is coming. We need every house behind us." Murmurs of agreement, concern, strategy. But when Lord Manderley stood and asked, "Who leads the North now?" His eyes didn't fall on Jon. They fell on her. Jon glanced at Sansa, unsure. She met Manderley's gaze. "The North will have its leaders. Jon Snow fights for our lives. I fight for our future." "She speaks like a queen," someone whispered. And that was the moment it began, not with a coronation, not with a crown, but with a murmur, a look, a shift. In private, Jon confronted her. "What are you doing?" Sansa sipped her wine calmly. "Leading." "I'm the one they chose." "No," she said, "they followed you into battle, but they looked to me." He stared at her, confused. "Since when are you like this?" "Since King's Landing," she said flatly. "Since I watched our father die? Since I learned the world doesn't save girls like me, it devours them." His face tightened. "This isn't you, Sansa." She turned away. "You don't know me anymore, Jon." He didn't argue, because, deep down, he knew she was right. Later that week, Arya returned. She was colder than ever, with eyes that had seen darker things than Sansa could imagine. They embraced stiffly, the kind of hug people give out of memory, not love. Sansa studied her closely, the silence, the dead-eyed stare, the casual way she mentioned killing Walder Frey like it was something ordinary. "You're not a lady anymore," Sansa said one night gently. Arya gave a crooked smile. "Neither are you." Sansa didn't smile back, because it was true. They stood together on the battlements that evening, watching the snow fall over Winterfell. Arya spoke first. "Remember when you said father was stupid for going south?" "I was a stupid girl," Sansa replied. "You still did what you had to." Sansa looked at her. "So did you." There was a long pause. Arya's voice was quieter now. "Do you ever think about what we've become?" Sansa didn't answer right away. Then, "Every night." Arya nodded. "Sometimes I wonder if we're still the good guys." "We're alive," Sansa said. "And that's enough?" "No," Sansa whispered. "But it's the only thing that matters right now." By the first full moon, ravens arrived. Cersei was still on the throne. Daenerys had landed in Dragonstone. The war was coming. Fire and ice, queen against queen, and the North was caught in the middle. Sansa walked the crypts that night. She knelt before her father's tomb. Cold stone, silent justice. "I used to dream of justice," she whispered. "I thought killing Joffrey would make it right, that killing Ramsay would give me peace, that if I could silence Littlefinger I'd feel free." The stone said nothing. "I was wrong," she said, and then, quietly, "But I don't care anymore, because peace was a lie. Justice was a game played by the powerful, and Sansa Stark, the girl who murdered a king and watched 1,000 men die, wasn't playing anymore. She was building something, and if it meant becoming a colder creature than the monsters she'd killed, so be it, because monsters get remembered and little birds get buried. The war came, not like a storm, but like a slow, dragging sickness, consuming everything it touched. Targaryen fire scorched the south. Cersei clung to her throne with desperation and blood. And in the far north, the dead began to rise. The long night crept down from the frost-bitten edges of the world, and Winterfell became a beacon, not of hope, but of strategy. It was no longer home. It was a fortress. Jon rode south to bend the knee to Daenerys. Sansa remained behind. She watched. His raven arrived days later, a neatly written letter sealed with a dragon's claw. He spoke of alliances, of trust, of unity. She burned it in her fireplace without reading the second page. Unity was an illusion. She'd lived too long in a world built on betrayal to believe in the fantasy of shared purpose. Daenerys might come with dragons, but dragons burn, and Sansa had no intention of trading one tyrant for another. The North would not kneel again, not while she ruled it. Arya watched her warily now. So did Brienne. There were moments, in the quiet between threats, where Sansa caught their glances, doubt, caution, maybe even fear, but none of them spoke it aloud, because Sansa still bled Stark, still wore her family's crest, still held the North together while the South burned and the dead marched. So they followed, even if they no longer understood the woman they were following. When Daenerys finally arrived, it was with fire in her wake. Jon rode beside her like a loyal hound, eyes flicking between queen and sister, caught between love and blood. The meeting was held in the great hall. The Dragon Queen descended from her throne of foreign titles and silver hair, and looked at Sansa like a wolf looks at ice, beautiful, but in the way that makes your bones ache. "You don't trust me," Daenerys said. "I don't trust rulers who say they're here to save us," Sansa replied. Jon stepped between them. "We don't have time for this." But Sansa wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the woman who could turn cities to ash. "You think the Iron Throne gives you the right to rule the North," Sansa said softly. "But we were never yours to take." Daenerys narrowed her eyes. "What exactly are you saying?" Sansa smiled, that still cold smile she had perfected. "I'm saying if you want the North, you'll have to burn it." Later that night, Jon found her in the Godswood. He looked tired, torn, desperate. "I don't understand you anymore," he said. "You used to believe in honor." Sansa didn't even look up. "Honor got our father killed. And our brother. And our mother. You sound like Cersei." She stood then, eyes dark. "No," she said. "Cersei played the game to hold power. I play to protect it. She murdered people. So have I." Jon stared at her. "You think you're the hero in this story," he said bitterly. "No," she whispered. "I know I'm not. And when the dead came, she fought alongside them, not with blades, with strategy, logistics, cold calculations. She sent boys to die in tunnels. She sacrificed towns to slow the Night King's army. She ordered retreats with no guarantees of survival, and in the end, the living won, but not without a cost. Thousands died." Jon looked across the field of corpses with grief in his chest. Sansa looked at them with cold eyes and said, "It was necessary." After the war, when Daenerys stood above King's Landing and gave her speech of conquest, Sansa whispered to Arya in the dark. "She won't stop," Arya asked. "Are we stopping her?" "No," Sansa said. "I am." The night Daenerys burned, alive in her chambers, no one saw who did it. Jon vanished for a day. Arya disappeared into shadow. Tyrion drank himself into silence, but only Sansa slept through the night. Peace returned, if only briefly. The Iron Throne melted. The North declared its independence, and Sansa Stark was crowned queen in the North. By candlelight and silence, no cheers, no songs, just cold air, and the quiet breath of a woman who had murdered kings, lords, lovers, even her own innocence, to get here. And as she sat the ancient throne of Winterfell, fingers tracing the wood of her ancestors, she whispered a single truth. "I killed a monster." She paused, then added, "and became one to survive him.